Hey guys, in today's video, I want to talk about burnout as a creator. Whether you work in video like I do, or you're a photographer or a graphic designer, anything in this creative field, I want to talk about burnout and how dangerous it can be to you and your life and your craft, but also a couple of things that I've found that can be really helpful when you experience burnout. Probably the worst feeling of burnout that I've had was around March or April of last year of 2024, where my business had grown to a place where honestly thought it never would get, or wasn't sure I could ever get it there. Last year we did almost $500,000 in revenue. We were constantly juggling multiple projects, multiple contractors at the same time. And I was still doing almost all the editing completely by myself. And that may resonate with some of you if you're, like I said, a videographer or a photographer or a graphic designer. If you're the one doing all the work, it's like you have to be on all the time, right? And, you know, it's kind of hard if you have a bad creative day at the office, because if somebody doesn't like your work, they're just going to move on to somebody else, or they're going to be unhappy, or there's obviously consequences to when we experience this. And so what happened was my work suffered, and my relationship suffered. My work suffered because I was so sick and tired of editing. I was tired of I didn't even want to look at a camera, but yet my family depends on me to run my business and, do a great job. And my clients depend on me to do a great job for them as well. And, obviously, and then if I'm not fulfilled at work and feeling like I don't want to be there and I'm not doing a good job, then obviously that affects my relationship with my wife. It affects my relationship with my little girl, with my friends. So I really just want to open a dialogue, if you happen to find this on YouTube, about burnout and how, first of all, you're not alone. So many of us deal with this. So many of us, hit a wall where it's just like, whether it's the type of projects that you're working on that you just feel are not inspiring you, or you're just tired. Like I said, I have a little girl who's 2, and sometimes I'm just tired, right? She's a lot to make sure that we're raising her well and, being as present as I can be for her. But you add that on top of running a business, on top of trying to have a social life and have friends and, be involved with stuff. And sometimes the work, the burnout really does set in, especially if you're working on things that you're not really that passionate about, or it's just been over and over, or it's been a long time and you haven't taken a break. So, and number one is get some creative help. So many times I believed a lie that the secret sauce of my business was I had to touch all of it and I had to be involved in all of it. I had to do the edit. I had to do the everything. And that's just not true. If we will trust people to do a good job for us, they will do a good job for us, and they will surprise us with even a different way of approaching something than you may have. We already had a production assistant who works remotely on our team, but we hired a part-time editor. And that was really hard to kind of let go of some of those creative reins that I was so used to me touching absolutely everything in the business. But man, did it free me up to not only become a better version and a better leader for a growing team, because I was forced to, but it helped me bring work to another person, right? And I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, but I have felt in the past like bringing on contractors or taking less revenue on a project because we're bringing in more help was scary, because I was scared that was gonna, the margins would be too tight and our business wouldn't flourish. But man, I tell you, if you're not the best version of yourself, your business is going to suffer anyway. So we bring the editor on, who's we were already friends, and he was a contractor for us, shooting and stuff. And it helped tremendously. So again, number one is get some creative help. If you are in a rut, if you're feeling those feelings of burnout, and I think all of us start to know when we're feeling those things, right? It's kind of just something in your gut where you're like, I don't feel like working out. I don't feel like going to see my friends. I am putting off things that need to get done until the last minute, right? There's these things that we start to know as creators that burnout's starting to creep in. So again, get some creative help, even if you have to take less on a job, or begin to start thinking about your work and thinking about your rates for a project with that included in. If you know let's say you're a photographer and you know that the editing post project is going to be 10 hours worth of work. Well, begin to price that into your work so that you can begin to build in help so where we don't experience that burnout all the time. The second one is get away. I have a cousin who's a very successful real estate investor, and he told me this one time, and it kind of blew my mind, but it's turned out to be so true. He said, the more time you take off, the more successful you will be. I was like, how could that possibly be true? You know, I have to be in the business, I have to be working. But every single time that we take a trip intentionally to get away, whether it's just my wife and I, or we take our daughter and we all go on a family trip, every time I step away from work, every time I step away from my craft, I am so reinvigorated every single time I come back, and it propels me and pushes us forward, whether it's creatively, in our business, whatever that is. But taking that time away gives some separation, and then it helps you launch forward. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. If you're feeling that burnout, if you have the margin to do it, get away. Even if it's just for 2 days, get away so that you can get refreshed and come back to your work with new eyes and a new energy. The last one is set boundaries. If there's a part of your job or a part of your creative process that you just absolutely hate, go ahead and block off a time when that's when you're going to work on it, and you're not going to do it other times. You're not going to do it at home. You're not going to look at it in bed on your phone. But if there's a specific task that you just hate doing, say, all right, I'm going to knock this out from 9 to 10, 2 days a week, or whatever it is that you have to do, but set boundaries around that thing to where it's not hovering over your head all the time, but nope, I deal with editing photos, or I deal with boring edits, or I deal with writing quotes, whatever that is that sucks the life out of you, that's not the thing that you love to do. Put boundaries around that so that you don't start to experience that, like I said, that loomingness over your head, that one thing that I know I got to do, that starts to lead us towards burnout when we just constantly feel like we have something that's hanging over our heads. If you happen to stumble upon this and found it helpful, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. I'm trying to grow this channel to my first 1,000 subscribers and get this off the ground. And also leave a comment. I would love to hear what you guys do to help kind of combat burnout, or once you know that you've been there, or once you know you're in it, what you do to help kind of step away, or what you do to help get yourself back in a better place so that you can continue to create and do a great job for your business and your family.